In this video, we'll focus on CSRF, which stands for Cross-Site Request Forgery. But why exactly we have to talk about this? And we'll do that with the help of an example. Okay, so two things. One, we'll talk about the theory. We'll also see that how it works in the example which we are doing. So let's get started. So let's say, till this point, what we are doing is we got a client, right, from where you are sending a request. And of course, this client can be a postman, this client can be a browser or any other application. And then we got a server here, right? And then this is a server which we are building in Spring Boot. So this is your Spring Boot server. And now when a client sends a request, of course, we are implementing security. That means whenever you send a request from client to server, you have to also send your logging details for the first time. If it is not there, then of course it will say, hey, who are you? You will not get the access. And we were getting the errors, right? So that's why we have to first enter the username password. You have to log in. Now, when you log in, what happens is when you pass the username and password by doing login, what you receive from a server is success, of course. Also, you receive a session ID. So if I want to show you the running project, so this project is not running now. Let's run this and let's hit the URL. So this is a login form you are getting, right? And when you say username, password, so let's say Naveen and Telusko, enter, you got this message, which is welcome to Telusko, but also you received a session ID. So if you refresh this multiple times, every time you will get the same session ID. And that's how the server knows, hey, this person is logged in. So let's not ask for login again, right? So it doesn't matter which URL you hit, you will use this session ID. So that means what you have on your client is the session ID. So every time you send a request, let's say if you want to get details about a particular resource, in that case also you have to send this session ID. So till you have the session ID, whatever the ID is, let's say 1256, that's your ID. Now, if you have this ID, server will verify and server says, okay, you are already authenticated user, I will give you the access. So this is good, right? You don't have to log in multiple times. And I don't remember last time when I used Gmail when I logged in. So basically, every time you use these famous applications, you normally prefer them to have stay signed in, which means every time you go there on your browser, you don't have to log in again. Is it good? Of course, it will save your time. Is it bad? Sometime. Let me tell you why. So let's say I'm using a third-party resource here. Any website which is not good, most of the applications are secure, but let's say if you go for downloading a pirated movie, and when you visit a particular website, which is not, of course you get things for free there, but what you don't understand is most of these websites are malicious. They run some script and they will steal from you. Then you will say, how? So let's say I visit to a particular website, which I should not. Let's say I'm downloading a particular crack version of a software. And I'm going to this website and it says, hey, get this software for free. I'm so happy. And then when I'm downloading it, while in that downloading, it will give me some pop-up, allow download, or allow this file access. And you say, okay, allow, everything allow because I want this software. And now this particular script, which is there in the malicious, I will name this as a malicious software. I know my handwriting is bad, but you got the point, right? So if I'm going to this malicious software, what this will do is, this will run some script and it will get this session ID because I'm already signed in from this particular machine, and then it will send the request to the server. Now server thought, hey, I got the request using this session ID and it's valid. So it will give the access. And then this particular malicious software or the website is stealing my information. That's wrong. But it happens. And that's why you should not go to some weird websites. Now, if we talk about this thing, how do we stop this? And this problem is called CSRF, which is cross-site because it is from other website, request forgery because they are doing the request on your behalf. And we need to stop it. And by default, your Spring Security will take care of it. I will show you how. But then when you talk about the protocol called HTTP, it got multiple methods, right? It's not just one. So CSRF works with, when you talk about CSRF, HTTP by default gives you different methods, right? So you work with GET for fetching data, you work with POST, you work with PUT, you work with DELETE. Now, when you talk about these methods like PUT, POST, DELETE, they actually change something on the server. And by default, it will take care of the CSRF. So Spring Security will not allow you to do these operations if you're not handling the CSRF. But GET is a bit normal, right? So GET will, by default, it will allow GET. Now question arises, how will you make it work? How will you secure it? Now, if you go back here, don't you think this session ID is wrong? It should be created every time. So what I feel is you should get a new session ID every time. So it's something like, see, HTTP by default is stateless, right? So it will not remember who you are. And that's why we have this session ID, which will remind the server, hey, I'm that person. But what if you generate a new session ID every time? So of course, even if someone is hacking your session ID, they can't get access to it. They can't actually access the server. That's one. The next way you can do is every time you send a request to the server should generate a token, a unique token, and you can send that token every time you want to send the request. I mean, that will be solved, right? And that is called the CSRF token, okay? Let me show you where we can see that. So if I go to the browser and if I say logout, because we are changing some data from the server now. So if I say logout, of course, we got this page. But if you see the view source of this page, okay, now this is the thing. I want to do that on my Chrome browser. So login. No thanks. Okay, so if I do a logout from here, and we got this page, let's go to the view source. And this is a source. Now, if you observe, there are a lot of content. Actually not, but yeah, we have some content on top here. But if you see, there is a special input tag, which is by default hidden. It's not there on the page, but then it has a value. So we got the name as _CSRF, and then this is the value. So if you can use this token to send, your job is done. But how will you do that? And how will I know this token, first of all? So to understand this, let's create an example, okay? So let's go back to the project and let's understand this step by step. What I will do is I will create one more controller here. I will say Java class, and I will name this as student controller, okay? And in this, I will have some operations. So first of all, I will just make this as a REST controller. And here, I will have some methods for getting all the students. But I want to represent student as well, right? I should do that in separate package, but since we are into learning phase, I will put that in everything in one package. So that is student. And in this student, I will create some variables. So private int ID and private string name, and let's say marks. So private int marks. Okay, so we got these three fields, and for these three fields, I need getter setters. Of course, I could have used Lombok, but let's say generate getter setters for all the variables. And also I need a constructor, parameterized constructor here for all three variables. And next I need a toString to print it. Okay, so we got this things here in the student, and now in the controller, basically I will create some objects. I'm not making it as a component, is because normally for normal POJOs, you don't make them component, standard practice. Okay, so I will create a method here, which will return me the list of students. So I will say, so let's say from the browser, if I want to access, let's say if I go back here and refresh, it is still working. So let's say if I request for the students, of course, you will not get anything because we don't have a mapping for it. So when I call for students, it should print the list of students. So here I can return a list of students, import the package, and here I will say get students. So I should do the mapping as well. So this will be for get mapping, and I'll be doing for /students. So whenever someone requests for this, I will execute this method, and this should return a list of students. I don't have it. So ideally, if you think about the application, it should be, the data should be there in the database. There should be some more layers, repository layer, service layer. But let's say I'm skipping those things now. I will just have that here. Again, not a good idea, but it works for this scenario. So, I mean, for the example, so I will say list of students, and let me have some hard-coded values. So list dot of. Okay, so I want to have the first object, new student. It should have some values. Let's say 1, Naveen, and let's say some marks, 60. And let's add only 2 objects. So 2, Kiran, and let's say 65. Okay, so we got 2 students, and now here I want to basically return those two students. So I will say return students. Our job is done, right? So this will return the data. And now if I refresh, let's see if this works. So restart done. Let me go back to my browser and refresh, and you can see we got data. So this is working, right? And this is awesome. So we got this data here. I just want to check if the security is still enabled. Yeah, it's enabled. So you can see we got the data. But what if you want to create a student? So let's say I go to my Postman now. This time I'll do it with Postman. And I want to get the students, and if I say send, so you can see we got data, and we are passing the username password as well. But now this time I want to create a new student. So let's say we got these 2 students, and now I want to create new one. I will just use this data and let's create a new student. So I will go to post request. I want the same URL, but this time post request. And in the body, I want to have this data. So this should be 3. Let's say Harsh, and Harsh got, let's say 70. So we got this data there. And now, ideally what should happen is, it should give you an error that the method is not there. If I click on send, it is saying unauthorized. This is weird. What I will do is, I will go back to my code and I will disable the Spring security just to see what happens, what type of errors you get. So, Maven reload done. Now we are not implementing Spring security, and I don't even want to pass the authorization data. I will keep it no auth because we don't have Spring security now. And in the body, I want this data. First of all, I will try to do send. Okay, so you can see this is the error I was expecting. It says 405 method not allowed, but what you got is unauthorized. Now that is weird. But first of all, let's create this method so that you will not get this error. So go back here to the code and let's create a method which will accept the post mapping. So I will say post mapping, and here I will say /students. The URL is same, but the mapping is different. And this will return a student. Whatever student you're adding, it will return the same student. And I will say add student. And here basically I want to accept that student. So I will say request body and student. Let's say student, I'm accepting a student. And this student I want to add in the list. How will you add? It's very simple. You say students dot add and you will pass a new student. It's that simple. Again, of course, it should be in the database, but since we are doing hard coding here, this works. And we have to also return the student. So return the student. Whatever you're receiving, let's send that. So we have implemented the method. I will just restart the application and let's see, will it work? Let's go back and click on send. So you can see it says, okay, that's good. And if you try to fetch all the students now, so you can see we got 3 students. So this is working, right? We are happy. But as soon as you enable this Spring security, let's see what happens. I'm enabling the Spring security now. Restart. Okay, so let's try to do the get students first. I will click on send. And of course, we are passing authorization, so it will work. But if you go back to post, and now if you try to add the same data, and in the authorization, we have to go for basic auth with the same values. Click on send, it should work, right? It's not. It's because CSRF token is not there. So whenever you do any update request like put, post, and delete, where changing something, CSRF token you have to send, otherwise it will not work. Okay, how will you make it work then? So one thing I'm going to try is, how do you send CSRF token? You can just go back to the headers, and here you have to pass one of the key pair value or key value pair, which is X CSRF hyphen token. This is what, not token. This is what you have to send. Now I know the key, I don't know the value. Maybe I can get the value from the browser. Not a good idea, but let's try. So I will just go back here and I want to get the token. So I will say localhost :8080. How will I get the token? You get the token from /logout. Don't do the logout. Just go on this page, right click, view page source, and just copy this. This is your token. I will just reduce the size of it so that I can copy in one go. Okay, copy. I'm not sure if this works. Let's try. Paste, send. Oh, it's not working. So maybe I have to generate the token and get it. I thought it will work. Okay, no problem. Let's generate the token from the code, and it might work. You try it out. You try it out and let me know if it is working for you. So I don't want to get that from the browser. Again, it's not a good idea to get it from the browser. Can you return the token from here? So from this particular code. So what you can do is you can request for the token and you can send it. So I will say public and it should return a CSRF token. So I will say CSRF token. And this is coming from springsecurity.security.web.csrf and say, maybe I will say get CSRF token, and this should return a token, right? Now, what should be the mapping? Maybe I will say get mapping, and the URL I want here is CSRF token. So when I request for this, it will generate a token for you. Okay, and then it should return a token. Now, how will you do that? That's tricky. See, when you talk about a method like HTTP, okay. So when you talk about a protocol like HTTP and when you're working with servlets, because behind the scenes Spring is servlet, right? Or Spring MVC is servlet. And if you go back to hello, we have used one of the object type, which is the HTTP servlet request, right? Now, if you get the object of request, you can get a lot of data, including the session ID and also the token. So I can just go back here and say HTTP servlet request. And with this request, okay, where I'm doing that, wrong place, it should be here. And request, okay. And here, with the help of that object, so I will say return. So from the request has a lot of methods. One of them is get attribute. Now, what is attribute name? Remember when we were trying to see the browser, not this one, yeah, this one. This is a name, which is underscore CSRF. So we'll simply use it here in double quotes, underscore CSRF, and you will get the token, right? But then get attribute gives you a type of object. You want a type of CSRF token. So, it's very simple. You have to just do typecasting. So cast it with this. Your job is done. So what this will do is, this will give you a CSRF token, which you can use to send the request. Let's try. Or maybe the token was not working when we tried with browser. I don't know how I forgot that. We are using two different users, right? The browser is a different user. The Postman is a different user. Okay, so here I will go back to my Postman, not the browser. Where is my Postman? It's here. Okay, so now I will first of all, let's check if the students are working. This is working, but I don't want to request for students. I want to I want to fetch CSRF token and click on the request. And this is token you got. You can see this is a parameter CSRF token and this is a value. So when you copy, you have to make sure that you copy from double quotes to double quotes and copy. So you can see the header name should be this X-CSRF-token. And now when you get this token, you can just go to your post request and in the headers, we got the key, replace the value. This is a value, new value. And I hope this will work. The body is same. Headers we have changed. Send. It worked. Okay, so this is good, right? So this is how basically you generate a token and send it. There are two more ways to handle this. One, in fact, we have talked about one before. What if you simply generate a new session every time? Then you don't have to worry about the CSRF. You can disable it. You can disable the check of it on the server side. And we'll see that how do we do that in upcoming sessions, but you can disable that. Next, you can work with the same site strict. So you can make sure that no other site can access it. So that's one of the way you can do that. So yeah, that's it from this video where we talked about CSRF token. But again, as I mentioned, you can also disable it and make sure that you generate a new session. Basically, you make your HTTP stateless or your session stateless. How do we do that? Let's see in the upcoming video. So in this video, we focused on CSRF token. How do we generate it? What problems it creates? How do we handle it? I hope you enjoyed. So let's see in the next video. Bye-bye.